Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmadhyasya yato nivayat taratas chate svavigya swarat
Janmadhyasya yatam vayari taratas chate svavigya swarat.
Tene brahma hridaya adhikavaye muyanti yatsurayaha
Tene brahma hridaya adhikavaye muyanti yatsurayaha.
Tejo varimidam yata vinimayo yatra trisargo misha
Tejam varimrida jata vinimayo jatra trisargumisa.
Damna svena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi.
Dhamna svena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of
I
Godhead.
offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto
I
you.
meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
The primeval cause of all causes.
The primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is the only who first imparted Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Or water seen on fire, land seen on water.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
Which is forever free from the illusory representation.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma projita kaitruvotra.
Dharma projita kaitruvotra.
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam.
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam.
Vedyam vastavam atravastu.
Vedyam vastavam astravastu.
Shivadam tapa trayonmulanam.
Shivadam tapo trayamulanam.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Kim vaparer Ishvaraha.
Kim vaparer Ishvaraha.
Sadyo hridi avarudyate tra.
Sadyo rudya avarudyate tra.
Kriti bihi sususubhistakshanat.
Kriti bihi sususubhistakshanat.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are material motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in the heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva's maturity.
Is sufficient in itself for God realization.
It's sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
By this culture of knowledge.
By this culture of knowledge.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam.
Sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam.
Sukhamukad amrita dravya sangitam.
Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Muhur aho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha.
Muhur aho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
The mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukhdev Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukhdev Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all.
Including liberated souls.
Including liberated souls.
Shinvatam swat Sakata Krishna
Shramvantam Sakata Krishna
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Hridyantaksto hi abhadrani
Hridyantastu hi abhadrani
Vidhunoti Srihitsatam.
Vidhunoti Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from Vedic
or
literature,
to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from it directly through Bhagavad Gita,
is itself righteous activity.
itself a righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's
acts
heart,
as a best wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing friend,
and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the devotees constantly engaged in hearing of him.
Nastapresu abhadresu
Nasta praishra bhadrishu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
nityam bhagavata sevayam
bhagavati uttamasloke
bhagavati uttamasloke
bhaktir bhavati naistaki.
bhakti bhavati naistiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam,
As he hears more about Krishna from the
and
Bhagavatam
from the devotees,
and from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service to the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tada rajastamo bhava
kamaloba dayaschaye
kamalo bhatayastai
cheta etar navidam
chaitaitar navidam
stifam sattve prasidati.
stitam sadve prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance.
one becomes freed from the modes of passion of ignorance.
And thus, material lust and avarice are diminished.
And thus material lust and avarice are
Evam
diminished.
prasana manaso
Evam prasana manas
Bhagavat bhakti yogataha
Bhagavat bhakti yogata
Bhagavat tattva vijnanam
Bhagavat tattva vijnanam
mukta sangasya jayate.
mukta sangasya jayate.
By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of when these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are
the
wiped away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure
becomes
goodness,
enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional
and
service,
understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hirdaya grantis
Hridayate hridaya grantis
chidyante sarva samsaya
chidyante sarva samshaya
Siyante chasya karmani
chidyante chasya karmani
Krista evatmanishvare.
drusta evadmanishvari.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga severs the hardness of material affection
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of samsham samagramam.
understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
Understand Supreme Godhead.
Understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead.
Understanding the Supreme Absolute True Personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from the devotees in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, verse number 9 and 10. Atir vasistas chayavan saradvan aristanemir bigur angirascha
Aristanemir Brigurangirascha
parasarogadi sutotarama
Parasharogadi Suto Tarama
utatya indra pramamade damavado
Utacha Indra Pramaded Mavad
medati devala arshtiseno
Medati Devala Arshitseno
paradvaja gotama pipalada
Bharadya Jagotama Pipalada
maitrena orva kavasa kumbhayonir
Maitreya Urva Karvasha Kumbhayuni
dvapayano bhagavan naradascha.
Vipayano Bhagavan Naradascha.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. From different parts of the universe there arrived great sages like Atri, Chayavana, Saradvan, Aristanemi, Brigu, Vasista, Parasara, Vishramrita, Angira, Parasurama, utatya indra pramada. Id damavahu medatihi devala aristasena Bharadvaja Gautama Pipalada Maitrena Orva Kavasa Kumbhayoni Dvayapayana and the great personality Narada. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Chayavana, a great sage and one of the sons of Bhrigu. He was born prematurely when his pregnant mother was kidnapped. Chayavana is one of the 6 sons of his father. There's a long story about Chayavana. Prabhupada's not telling it here, but if you've ever taken the Ayurvedic preparation called Chavan Prash, it's named after Chayavana Muni. Because his old age was rejuvenated by the 2 Vedic doctors, Ayurvedic doctors in ancient history. And he became a young and handsome man. That's a long story, so we won't tell it now. Bhrigu Muni. When Brahmaji was performing a great sacrifice on behalf of Varuna, Maharshi Bhrigu was born from the sacrificial fire. He was a great sage, and his very dear wife was Puloma. He could travel in space like Durvasa, Narada, and others, and he used to visit all the planets of the universe. Before the battle of Kurukshetra, he tried to stop the battle. Sometimes he instructed Bharadwaja Muni about astronomical evolution, and he is the author of the great Bhrigu Samhita, the great astrological calculation. He explained how air, fire, water, and earth are generated from ether. He explained how the air in the stomach works and regulates the intestines. As a great philosopher, he logically established the eternity of the living entity. In the Mahabharata. He was also a great anthropologist, and the theory of evolution was long ago explained by him. He was a scientific propounder of the 4 divisions and orders of human society known as the Varnashrama institution. He converted the Kshatriya king Vitahabhya into a Brahmana. Vasistha Muni. See Srimad Bhagavatam 196. We've already read that. Parasara. He is the grandson of Vasistha Muni and father of Vyasadeva. He is the son of Maharshi Shakti, and his mother's name was Adrishyati. He was in the womb of his mother when she was only 12 years old, and from within the womb of his mother he learned the Vedas. His father was killed by a demon, Kalamasapada, and to avenge this he wanted to annihilate the whole world. He was restrained, however, by his grandfather Vasistha. He then performed a Rakshasa-killing yajna, but Maharaja Pulastya restrained him. He begot Vyasadeva, being attracted by Satyavati, who was to become the wife of Maharaj Santanu. By the blessings of Parasara, Satyavati became fragrant for miles. Well, before she smelled like a fish because her father was a fisherman. But after being blessed by Parasara, and after he gave her a child, who was Vyasadeva himself, well, before that, also, she had this very enchanting fragrance. And because of that, she attracted Satyavati Muni. King Santanu, I'm sorry. Okay. By the blessings of Parasara, Satyavati became fragrant for miles. He was present also, Parasara was also present during the time of Bhisma's death. He was spiritual master of Maharaj Janaka and a great devotee of Lord Shiva. He is the author of many Vedic scriptures and sociological directions. Gadi Sutta, or Vishwamrita, a great sage of austerity and mystic power, he is famous as Gadi Sutta because his father was Gadi, a powerful king of the province of Kanyakubja, part of Uttara Pradesh. Although he was a Kshatriya by birth, he became a Brahmana in the very same body by the power of his spiritual achievements. He picked a quarrel with Vasistha Muni when he was a Kshatriya king and performed a great sacrifice in cooperation with Meganga Muni, and thus was able to vanquish the sons of Vasistha. He became a great yogi, and yet he failed to check his senses, and thus was obliged to become the father of Sakuntala, the beauty queen of world history. Once, when he was a Kshatriya king, he visited the hermitage of Vasistha Muni, and he was given a royal reception. Vishwamrita wanted from Vasistha a cow named Nandini, and the Muni refused to deliver it. Well, what happened is he came with a large retinue of soldiers, or army, and Vasistha Muni, who was a hermit, a Brahmana living very austerely in the forest, was able to serve a huge feast that satisfied everyone, Vishwamrita Muni and his whole army. And when he saw that the sage was able to do this because he had this special cow called Nandini, who was not an ordinary cow, obviously. She's a descendant from Surabhi in the spiritual world. And so he's thinking, look, this mendicant in the forest who's living an austere life doesn't need to have such an opulent cow. I'm a king. I need this cow. So he asked him for the cow. But Vasistha Muni refused to give it to him. So he stole the cow. And as it was being taken away, the cow started crying and pleaded with Vasistha Muni to save him. And therefore there was a quarrel between the sage and the king. Eventually, Vishwamrita killed all the sons of Vasistha Muni and tried to kill Vasistha Muni, but he was defeated by the spiritual strength of Vasistha, and thus the king decided to become a Brahmana, because you realize that Brahmanas are more powerful than Kshatriyas. He realized that the Brahma Tejas, or the power of a Brahman, is much greater than the Kshatriya Tejas, or the power of Kshatriyas. So he wanted to become a Brahmana. And he started to perform a severe austerity for 60,000 years. But at one point, Indra was afraid of him developing so much power, so he sent this beautiful woman to make him fall down. And he did fall down, and he and the heavenly woman had a child called Sakuntala. And there's a big story about Sakuntala. It's a very long, beautiful story. Many of you probably have seen the Hindi film about Sakuntala. Before becoming a Brahmana, he underwent severe austerity on the bank of the Koshika. He was also one who tried to stop the Kurukshetra war. Angira. He is one of the 6 mental sons of Brahmana and the father of Brihaspati, the great learned priest of the demigods and heavenly planets. He was born of the semen of Brahmaji given to a cinder of fire. Uttatya and Samvarta are his sons. It is said that he is still performing austerity and chanting the holy name of the Lord at a place known as Alokananda on the banks of the Ganges. Parasurama. Okay, so this was also, his story was also explained previously that we've read. Uttatya, one of the 3 sons of Maharaj Angira. He was the spiritual master of Maharaj Mandata. He married Bhadra, the daughter of Soma, the moon. Varuna kidnapped his wife Bhadra, and to retaliate the offense of the god of water, meaning Varuna, he drank all the water of the world. Mehatiti, an old sage of yore, an assembly member of the heavenly king Indradeva, his son was Kanva Muni, who brought up Sakuntala in the forest. He was promoted to the heavenly planet by strictly following the principles of retired life, Vanaprastha. Devala, a great authority like Narada Muni and Vyasadeva. His good name is on the list of authorities mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita when Arjuna acknowledged Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He met Maharaj Yudhishthira after the battle of Kurukshetra, and he was the elder brother of Domya, the priest of the Pandava family. Like the Kshatriyas, he also allowed his daughter to select her own husband in the Swayamvara meeting, and at that ceremony all the bachelor sons of the rishis were invited. According to some, he is not Asita Devara. Bharadvaja, he's also explained previously, we've read about him. Gautama, one of the 7 great sages of the universe, Saradvan. Gautama was one of his sons. Persons in the Gautama Gotra dynasty today are either his family descendants or in his disciplic succession. The Brahmanas who profess Gautama Gotra, or being in the direct family of Gautama, are generally family descendants, and the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas who profess Gautama Gotra are all in the line of his disciplic succession. He was the husband of the famous Ahalya, who turned into stone when Indradeva, the king of the heaven, molested her. Ahalya was delivered by Lord Ramachandra. Gautama was the grandfather of Kripacharya, one of the heroes of the battle of Kurukshetra. Maitreya, a great rishi of yore, he was spiritual master of Vidura and a great religious authority. He advised Dhritarashtra to keep good relations with the Pandavas. Duryodhana disagreed and thus was cursed by him. He met Vyasadeva and had religious discourses with him. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So we see that there's many illustrious, powerful, and pure, I'd say relatively pure devotees. And the Mahabharata and the Srimad Bhagavatam give a who's who of the spiritual world. So, hearing about these great sages, many of whom are still alive today, is very important for developing Krishna consciousness. So, today I wanted to talk about something special in relationship with this. Let me just get this one quote here. So, in the Adi Leela, I'm sorry, Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi 2:10, there's a very nice verse that says, in terms of his, meaning Krishna's various manifestations, he is known in 3 features, called the impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma, and the original personality of Godhead. So, we know that. Vadanti tat tattvavitas tattvam yaj advaya. One second, I just want to find this one verse. Okay, anyway, Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavan iti sabhyate. So, the Lord is understood in 3 stages, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So Prabhupada writes, the impersonal Brahman is a partial representation of the absolute truth, realized in the absence of such complete potencies. So, Krishna has Parasya Shakti Vividaya Vasuyate. He has infinite number of potencies. And so Brahman is one of them. We're also one of his potencies. The demigods are also his potencies. All the expansions of the Lord, the first Chaturvyuha, Narayana, the second Chaturvyuha, and the Vishnu expansions in the material world are all coming from Krishna. So, therefore, the first syllable of the word Bhagavan is Ba, which means sustainer and protector. The next letter, Ga, means leader, pusher, and creator. And Va means dwelling. All living beings dwell in the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord dwells within the heart of every living being. Combining all these concepts, the word Bhagavan carries the import of inconceivable potency and knowledge, energy, strength, opulence, power, and influence, devoid of all varieties of inferiority. So this word Bhagavan is very important. Not anybody can be called Bhagavan. Like, for example, some people say, Bhagavan Rajneesh. Rajneesh is not Bhagavan, right? Or sometimes they call other people Bhagavan. But they're not, I mean, they don't have an understanding of what Bhagavan means. Therefore, they loosely and irresponsibly use that term. So it says, combining all these concepts, Bhagava. The word Bhagavan carries the import of inconceivable potency in knowledge, energy, strength, opulence, power, and influence, devoid of all varieties of inferiority. Without such inconceivable potencies, one cannot fully sustain or protect. So that's why Brahma creates, Shiva destroys, but Vishnu maintains. It's very difficult to maintain something, much more difficult than simply creating or destroying it, especially when we talk about the whole material creation. Without such inconceivable potencies, one cannot fully sustain or protect. Our modern civilization is sustained by scientific arrangements devised by many great scientific brains. We can just imagine, therefore, the gigantic brain whose arrangements sustain the gravity of the unlimited number of planets and satellites, and who creates the unlimited space in which they float. So, the scientists today, they're building buildings, they're making viruses, or they're making cures, and all these different things, and all that in the name of maintaining the society. Just like, as soon as this COVID virus came into existence, the government said, we need to get a injectable, what do you call it? We have to find a cure for it. So they've spent a lot of money and engaged many scientists all over the world to find a cure for COVID. So in that sense, these scientists are trying to maintain the civilization that we're living in. However, who is maintaining the whole universe? The universe is much greater than this tiny planet called the Earth. Therefore, Prabhupada draws a comparison here that the scientists are maintaining society today. They have airplanes, they have trains, they have submarines, they have tunnels, they have come up with digital technology, all these different things, right? And trying to sustain modern society, just like when they were afraid of Y2K, where every computer in the world might fail because of some calculation mistakes that they made. They had to work on saving the situation of something that they created themselves. So, because if every computer failed in the world, there would be chaos. You wouldn't know, the banks wouldn't know how much money people have. All the defense mechanisms wouldn't work properly, and everything controlled by computers would fail, right? Airlines, so many things. So we see that the scientists, and this is correct what Prabhupada says, that one can fully, without such inconceivable potencies, our modern civilization is sustained by scientific arrangements devised by many great scientific brains. Then he forms a comparison. He says, we can just imagine, therefore, the gigantic brain whose arrangements sustain the gravity of the unlimited number of planets and satellites, and who creates the unlimited space in which they float. Well, he also says that this is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. So if we look in the Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter, 13th verse, we find a very interesting verse and purport, which says, I'm sorry, 13th chapter, 15th verse. And it says, Yeyam yattat prabhakshyami yajgyat vamritam asnute anadi matparam brahma nasat tan nasat uchyate. Second. Okay. So it says that if one considers the intelligence needed to orbit man-made satellites, one cannot be fooled into thinking that there is not a gigantic intelligence responsible for the arrangements of the various planetary systems. There is no reason to believe that all the gigantic planets float in space without the superior arrangement of a superior intelligence. This subject is clearly dealt with in the Bhagavad Gita 15:13. That's where I got mixed up. So 15:13 says, Kam avishya chabutani tarayam yaham ojasa pushnami chosadi sarva samabhutva rasatmakaha. I enter, Krishna says, into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. And in the purport it says, it should be understood that all planets are floating in the air only by the energy of the Lord. The Lord enters into every atom, every planet, and every living being. That is discussed in the Brahma Samhita. It is said there that one plenary portion of the Supreme Personality Godhead, Paramatma, enters into the planets, the universe, the living entity, and even into the atom. So due to his entrance, everything is appropriately manifested. When the spirit soul is there, a living man can float on the water. But when the living spark is out of the body and the body is dead, the body sinks. Of course, when it is decomposed, it floats just like straw and other things. But as soon as the man is dead, he at once sinks in the water. Similarly, all these planets are floating in space, and this is due to the entrance of the supreme energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His energy is sustaining each planet just like a handful of dust. If someone holds a handful of dust, there is no possibility of dust falling. But if one throws it in the air, it will fall down. Similarly, these planets which are floating in the air are actually held in the fist of the universe, in the universal form of the Supreme Lord. By his strength and energy, all moving and non-moving things stay in their place. It is said in the Vedic hymns that because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sun is shining and the planets are steadily moving. Were it not for him, all the planets would scatter like dust in air and perish. Similarly, it is due to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the moon nourishes all vegetables. Due to the moon's influence, the vegetables become delicious. Without the moonshine, the vegetables can neither grow nor taste succulent. Human society is working, living comfortably, and enjoying food due to the supply from the Supreme Lord, Otherwise, mankind could not survive. The word rasatmaka is very significant. Everything becomes palatable by the agency of the Supreme Lord through the influence of the moon. Well, this is an extremely profound purport. 15th chapter, 13th verse. And it's scientific. It helps us to understand that through comparison, if so many scientists are required to maintain the internet, maintain the communication system in the world, maintain the digital technology that is so important for defense and for banking and for industry and so forth, then who's maintaining the whole universe? You see, it's not that it happened by accident. Everything is happening systematically and automatically. Just like, let's see, Dhananjaya, can you explain about the complicated computer system in your business? Just give a quick. He's not here? Oh, okay. Okay. Well, he explained to me the very complicated computer system in their small company, one little company, and the time it took to get it installed and working properly. So, and it works automatically after that. Nothing works automatically unless there's a huge organization behind it. And the most automatic, amazing organization are the planets. These gigantic planets moving in specific orbits and being held in those orbits. We calculate time by the movement of those planets in orbits that are specific. If they were not held in those orbits, they would scatter, Prabhupada said, like dust thrown in the air. You see? And the scientists know all this, but they refuse to accept that there's a supreme scientist, although they take credit for their little accomplishments. You see? So this whole thing is a hoax. This whole thing of modern science is a hoax. They're all envious of Krishna and refuse to accept that Krishna is the supreme scientist, but yet they put their name to any little thing that they discover in this material world. Okay, so there's no reason to believe that all the gigantic planets float in space without the superior arrangement of a superior intelligence. This subject is clearly dealt with in Bhagavad Gita 15:13, where the personality Godhead says, I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. Were the planets not held in the grip of the personality Godhead, they would all scatter like dust in the air. Modern scientists can only impractically explain this inconceivable strength of the personality of Godhead. The potencies of the syllables ba, ga, and va apply in terms of many different meanings. Through his different potent agents, the Lord protects and sustains everything. He's talking about the demigods. But he himself, and also his expansions, the Vishnu expansions, but he himself personally protects and sustains only his devotees, just as a king personally sustains and protects his own children while entrusting the protection and sustenance of the state to various administrative agents. So now we see why Krishna says he's equal to everyone, but he pays special attention to his devotees. Yeah, he's equal to everyone through his Vishnu expansions and through the demigods. They're providing everything for everyone, whether they're pious or impious. But he gives special attention to his devotees. Therefore, to become a devotee of Krishna is the most desirable position to have. Of course, most people don't realize this. Out of the 7 trillion people in the world, hardly a handful of people believe in Bhagavan, Krishna. You see, hardly a handful out of that 7 trillion people. Why? Because they're ignorant. they don't realize what is their real salvation, what is the real facilities that Krishna gives to his devotees so that they can become free of the oppressive karma, samsara cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. So, the Lord is the leader of his devotees, as we learn from Bhagavad Gita, which mentions that the personality of Godhead personally instructs his loving devotees how to make certain progress in the path of devotion and thus surely approach the kingdom of God. So that's 10:10, which explains Tesam satata yuktanam pajatam pratipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayantite. Evam ivanaparakam paratam agyana nasyami atma. Yeah. So anyway, he explains that I, dwelling in the heart of every living entity, light up with the lamp of knowledge the ignorance born of darkness. So, and then he says that for those who are engaged in my devotional service unfailingly, who are always thinking of me, I give them the knowledge by which they come to me. So, we see that Krishna gives a lot of attention to, personal attention to his devotees. So why wouldn't a person want to be a devotee? To get all that personal attention by the Supreme Personality of Godhead only because they're ignorant, only because they're completely in illusion, only because they're envious of the Lord. The scientists and philosophers are specifically envious of the Lord, and therefore they trick other people to avoid serving the Lord and instead becoming exploitable entities by the scientists and their different inventions to cheat people, to divert their attention from Krishna consciousness. So, the Lord is also the recipient of all the adoration offered by his devotees, for whom he is the objective and the goal. For his devotees, the Lord creates a favorable condition for developing a sense of transcendental love of Godhead. Yeah, what's a favorable condition? His pastimes. He comes and manifests his transcendental pastimes. And people like Prabhupada and the great acharyas have written vast volumes of books explaining those transcendental pastimes, and they've established temples, just like the Goswamis wrote so much literature, and they also opened temples so people could come and learn about the Lord, just like we're learning every day things about the Lord by reading the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes he wants to create a favorable condition for developing a sense of transcendental love of Godhead. Sometimes he does this by taking away a devotee's material attachments by force and baffling all his material protective agents. For thus, the devotee must completely depend on the Lord's protection. In this way, the Lord proves himself the leader of his devotees. Well, that's the subject that we're looking at. And one second. Okay, so we see that this happened to Maharaj Parikshit. We just read about it. And he, in a sense, gave up everything, understanding that his time was up, and he should take advantage of that knowledge, that he only has 7 days left to live. And therefore, he disassociated himself from everything, from being a king, from being a husband, from having kids, from having so much power, having so much wealth, having so much opulence, and so forth. He gave it all up. Or in other words, the Lord created a favorable situation for him to lose everything material and become completely dependent on the Lord. In this way, the Lord proves himself the leader of his devotees. And he puts the devotee in a position where he must depend completely on the Lord's protection. The Lord is not directly attached to the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material world, for he is eternally busy in the enjoyment of transcendental bliss with paraphernalia composed of his internal potencies. Yet, as the initiator of the material energy, as well as the marginal potency, meaning the living beings, he expands himself as the Purusha avatars, the three Vishnus, who are invested with potencies similar to his. The Purusha avatars are also in the category of Bhagavat Tattva, because each and every one of them is identical with the original form of the personality of Godhead. The living entities are as infinitesimal particles and are qualitatively one with him. They are sent into this material world for material enjoyment, to fulfill their desires to be independent individuals. But still they are subject to the supreme will of the Lord. Yes, every one of us wanted to come to this world and wanted to be independent of the Lord and to try and be a Lord ourselves. Therefore, we own things, and if you have a business, you exploit other people, or if you're a dictator, or if you're a thug and a gangster, you want to exploit other people, or if you're a big industrialist, you're exploiting other people. You're like a little lord, a little god, and people, as soon as they get some power, they try to take advantage of other people. You see. So, we've all come to this world to enjoy the material nature independent of Krishna. We turned our back on the Lord. So, then Prabhupada explains, the living entities are as infinitesimal particles and are qualitatively one with him. They are sent into this material world for material enjoyment to fulfill their desires to be independent individuals. But still they are subject to the supreme will of the Lord. The Lord deputes himself in the state of supersoul to supervise the arrangements for such material enjoyment. Yeah, man proposes, God disposes. So, everything depends on our desires. If we desire sense gratification and we insist on it, then Krishna makes the arrangement so you can have, or we can have sense gratification. But he also makes the arrangement that sense gratification is always accompanied by misery. That's a law of nature. The more you sense gratify, the more you suffer. The example of a temporary fair is quite appropriate in this connection, a fair or a festival. Right? If the citizens of a state assemble in a fair to enjoy for a short period, the government deputes a special officer to supervise it. Such an officer is invested with all governmental power, and therefore he is identical with the government. When the fair is over, there is no need for such an officer, and he returns home. The Paramatma is compared to such an officer. Yeah. So what does that mean exactly? Well, that's explained in the 13th chapter, 18th verse. And I've always wondered about this verse, and today we're going to hear about it. That is explained 13th chapter, 18th verse. So here it says, let me see, wait a minute. One second. I'm sorry. 15th chapter, 18th verse. So it says, the Supreme Lord, in his localized aspect of Paramatma, is also described in the Vedas themselves. The following verse appears in the Vedas, Chandogya Upanishad 8, 12, 13, Tavad Esa Samprasado, and so forth. The supersoul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahma jyoti. Then, in his form, he remains in his spiritual identity. That supreme is called the Supreme Personality. This means that the Supreme Personality is exhibiting and diffusing his spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate illumination. That Supreme Personality also has a localized aspect as Paramatma. By incarnating himself as the son of Satyavati and Parasara, he explains the Vedic knowledge as Vyasadeva. So, here, this Paramatma is compared to the delegated officer who manages a fair, just like you have Kumbh Mela. Who manages the Kumbh Mela? You know? Huh? The local government, right? Yeah, but the central government is also overseeing it, right? Yeah. So, therefore, Krishna he's taking care of his devotees. He's enjoying with his devotees in the spiritual world, and he's taking care of his devotees in the material world, right? But for those people who want to go to some fair, just like we have the Ananda Mela, and then there's the sea fair for the demons in downtown Seattle, or for the rest of the people, and all these other fairs at the Seattle Center and so forth. So there's an agent of the government who's deputed to help organize and maintain the fair. But when the fair is over, you don't need that person anymore to manage or oversee. And he returns home. So the Paramatma is like that. It's an expansion of the Lord in order to satisfy the material desires of the illusioned living beings. But also, the Paramatma, when he sees that a living being is now defeated or disgusted with material pleasures, he gives knowledge by which that person can go back to Godhead. All knowledge, all remembrance, and all forgetfulness come from the Paramatma. So when someone wants sense gratification, the Paramatma helps him forget Krishna. And when he wants Krishna, the Paramatma helps him to remember Krishna. You see? So this is something we should understand, because we are living inside. We have a mind, and we're seeing things from the outside, and we're hearing messages from the Bhagavad Gita, and we have to decide whether we want sense gratification or do we want Krishna. When we want sense gratification, Krishna helps us forget him, and we make mistakes. We insult people. We try to take advantage of others. All of a sudden, we act like we're very civilized, but then when we get frustrated, just like once, there was a very pious man, and he was living in a village, and it was near a deep forest, and people were very superstitious in that village, and they would go into the forest, and they would worship this one tree. You have this in India too, don't you? Yeah. Villagers will go and make offerings to a tree, like the pipali tree or to the banyan tree. Or sometimes they think there's a ghost in the tree, so they go and make offerings. Is this right? Yeah. So the people worshiped a certain tree, and they believed it was embodied in the tree was some Holy Spirit capable of blessing or cursing them. And to appease the tree, the people made regular offerings of meat, wine, cloth, and other things. Does this ring a bell? Are there people like that in India today also? In the cities, they're doing it in a different way, but the same thing. So after the offerings were made, the remains were distributed to the poor. So this practice attracted many people, and the tree shrine became very popular. But there was one believer in God who got really upset to see this. So one day he decided to cut down the tree, so the villagers would stop this silly, superstitious practice. And he became convinced that God would be pleased if he cut the tree down, and showed all these pagans, these unbelievers, that their idol was merely a tree and nothing more. And then he would use the tree wood to burn, to make fire, and just show that there's nothing but ash. So one day, he woke up early in the morning, and he said his prayers, and he got his axe, and he went walking toward the tree, determined to cut it down. But when he went there, near the tree, there was a very strange-looking guy who was looking at him, and he stopped him. He said, "Good morning, sir. Are you carrying an axe to cut down the holy tree?" And the man was surprised. He said, how did the stranger know I was going to do this? Yeah, he said, "I'm going to cut it down, the tree, to please God. I will show the ignorant people that their worship of the tree is superstitious. There's no spirit in the tree. It's all fantasy." And then the stranger said, no, you can't cut down the tree. And he said, "Who are you to tell me I can't cut down the tree? I'm going to chop it down to please God. Don't you understand? I will teach these ignorant people that their worship is inspired by the devil himself and not pleasing to God." So then the stranger said, "But I am the devil." And he said, "And I'm not going to let you cut down the tree." And then the man said, "You can't stop me. And in the name of God Almighty, I will kill you." And then he knocked down the devil, almost knocked him out. So then the devil said, "Now look, you can't kill me because God has given me duration of life until the judgment day. I have the power to lead people astray from God's path. That's what I'm supposed to do." He said, you can't kill me. But he said, "But I can see you're a sincere believer, a man of honor, who wants to help the people follow the right path. I know you earn a modest living and have a large family to feed. You should consider your family, and you have to think about taking care of them. And you should think very carefully before you commit a rash act that you and your family, that may cause you and your family to suffer in the future. Maybe I can make your life a little easier so you can do more to help people without endangering your life and your family." So the man said, "Why would you want to help me? You're the devil. You trick people. You'll take me away from God's word. You've been cheating and deceiving people since the beginning of time." But then he said, No. God has given me power only to deceive the ignorant, not the true believers like you. He said, "In fact, I'm a servant of God like yourself. When I see a person desiring to serve God sincerely, I want to help them to do good work. Think of your wife and children and how much they need you. I am ready to help you and others in a way that to protect your family and to maintain, other people also, especially poor people. I'll place 2 gold coins under your pillow every morning so that every morning when you wake up, you'll find them. And you can use these valuable coins to buy everything necessary to maintain your family, and with whatever's left over, you can serve the poor people." And so he said, No, you're the devil. You're the master of deceit and lies and mischief. How can I trust you to keep a promise? Then the devil said, I will not cheat such a pious man as yourself. Don't you understand? You cannot lose anything by believing in me. If I do cheat you, you will know right away, because the 2 coins will not be underneath your pillow. And then you can come and beat me up or do whatever you want. So the pious man thought about the logic of the devil, and he gave up his mission to cut down the tree, and he returned home. And the next morning, there were 2 gold coins under his pillow. And he used them to buy whatever they needed for their family, he needed for his family, and the rest he gave to the poor people. And he told his wife about this. He said, I met the devil yesterday. So she said, where'd you get those gold coins from? He said, I met the devil yesterday, and he promised to give me 2 gold coins every day so that you and I and the family can live comfortably and we can help poor people. And he kept his promise because this morning I found 2 gold coins under my pillow. So the wife said, are you crazy? The devil is evil. He's not here to help you serve God. He said, no, I thought like that also, but he's actually a very logical person. And he was so concerned about me. He said that he only does evil to tricks people who are ignorant, but not to real devotees of the Lord. So I think he's a nice guy, actually, So he said, let's use these gold coins. Let's help our family. Let's help the poor people, and do God's work. So they did that day, and everything worked out fine. So the next morning he woke up. Immediately he looked under his pillow, and there were no 2 gold coins. So then he looked around. He looked under the mattress everywhere. And then he came out. He woke up his wife and said, that nonsense, that rogue, he cheated me. He's going to get it now. So he grabbed his axe, and he was determined to chop the tree down and beat up the devil. So he goes, and then at one point, the pious man grabbed his axe and hurried to chop down the tree, the devil's false idol, as well as chop off the devil's head. He was so angry that the devil did not keep his promise to supply the 2 gold coins. But yet, he met the devil right near the tree, and the devil said, where are you going? He said, I should never have believed your lying words, he said. I'll chop your head off, and that false idol of a tree. The man said he was really upset. He said, I should never have believed you. So the devil opened his eyes really wide, and he made a horrible face, and he exhaled a foul smell, very, very foul, and it almost knocked him over. He became almost unconscious. And the devil said, you dare to threaten me? I will kill you as you wanted to kill me. And then the man got afraid. He said, please, please, don't do that. Don't think about my family. I have my kids. Who will take care of them? I was not able to, how come I was not able to knock you down? The other day, I knocked you down very easily. And the devil smiled and said, the other day, you wanted to serve God sincerely. But today, you came angry because you didn't get the 2 pieces of gold. That's how I defeated you. So you see how dangerous it is to have material attachments and material desires. That when you're completely dedicated to Krishna, nothing can stop you from serving Krishna, and you have no other thoughts in your mind than to please the Lord, then the Lord is supporting you. Right? That means that you'll be successful in one way or other. Even if he takes everything away from you, that's also his blessing, because he wants you to not be fooled anymore by material desires, and to take complete shelter of him, and to keep your mind completely focused on him. Right? So one way or the other. There's 2 ways he's training people. One is through misery, and the other is through mercy. 2 ways that he trains people to come back to God, through misery or mercy. So, if we understand these things, and there are many things that we have to understand, just like we explained today about the Paramatma. Paramatma is not eternal in the material world. As soon as the material world is winding up, the Paramatma goes back, merges into the Brahma jyotir, and ultimately is non-different than Krishna, but his sojourn in the material world is over. But then, again, there's another creation. It's expanded again as the Paramatma, and then into the heart of every living entity, into every atom. And what's the purpose? To help people in their sense gratification. So he's helping them achieve their desires. Now there's two types of desires. Either we desire Krishna or we desire Maya, right? He can help us in both ways. But then there's Durga Mata, who gives us material desires and then takes them away from us and makes us suffer terribly. So you see, when you understand all these things operating in the material world, then you realize there's only one solution to this. That is, Sarvadharmam Parityaja, Mahamekam Saranam Vraja, Aham Tvam Sarvapapipyo, Moksisyami Masucha. As long as we're tricked by the material nature, by the enticements of material nature, the false narrative of the scientists and the philosophers and the mundane teachers, our focus goes off of Krishna, and we go in and become subject to all the suffering of the material world. So we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? Okay. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Yes.
Maharaj, as you have explained that we should not get tricked by this Maya's tricks.
Yes.
So even within serving in doing the devotional service, even within the devotees association,
Yeah.
sometimes it happens we feel like, oh yes, I did it, like that's a trick of Maya, that even we know everything we are doing in devotion service is Guru and Krishna's mercy.
Yes.
Only because of that mercy we are able to render that service. But sometimes in subtle
You
way,
did what? What did you do?
means whatever service we do little bit,
Like driving the truck, for example?
whatever, yeah, anything. Even though coming to the class is like a Guru and Krishna's mercy.
Well, who did you do it for? Yourself or for Krishna? When you say, yes, I did it, who gave you the power to do it? Who gave you the opportunity to do it? What are you talking about? I did it. What's the it?
Action, basically. Whatever the
Well, okay,
activity.
you're going to work, you got a job, you're making money, you're bringing the money home, feeding your family. It's not, you're talking about things like that?
Yeah, means anything.
Anything. Let's say
anything.
you write a book and become famous. I did it.
Yes.
That's the title of the book, I did it.
Basically, my question is even though we know that we are doing for Guru and Krishna's pleasure.
Who gave you the ability to do it? The intelligence, the senses of the body, including the mind, and then the intelligence. Who gave you all those instruments by which you did something? And who can take them away from you?
Yes.
You see my point? You have to realize how precarious our situation is. He gives you a voice. You don't even know how it works, the larynx. It's a very complicated instrument. And then the ear, in order to hear. It's another complicated instrument. And then eyes to see. It's also very, very complicated. So you got all this equipment. Who gave you the equipment? Did you do it?
No.
Okay, then you have to write another book. What I did not do. You see? There's a lot of things that you didn't do and I didn't do. I didn't create this body. I didn't create the material world. I didn't create the sun. I didn't create the moon. So there are a lot more things. You can write a longer book of what you didn't do than what you did do.
Yes.
And when you write the book of what you did not do, it would be a gigantic book. And the book that what you did do is like a little thin few pages. I pass stool every day. Yeah, you did that. Right. I passed urine every day. Yeah, you did that. I had mucus and spit. You did that. Right. What else did you do? Okay, you worked hard at the business and you made money. You fed your family. But there are millions of families. You only fed one family. So if you write the book, I did it, and you write the book, all the things I did not do, you see that all the things you did not do is much bigger.
Yes.
Much, much bigger. And then what you did do is like nothing, a little tiny little bit. How many pages you think you could write? I did it.
It's very small.
So we're learning or what we didn't do by hearing Bhagavatam every day.
Yeah, the basic question is like how not to get tricked.
By
into
knowledge. By knowledge. You don't want to be tricked like the man,
This. Yes.
because the devil, he spoke so nicely to him. He's so logical, and he wanted, help him do his service to God by giving him 2 gold coins every day, right? But as soon as he became attached to those gold coins, he lost all his spiritual power. He couldn't defeat the devil. So you have to be careful how you use your money, how you use your time, how you use your words. Every time we divert ourselves from Krishna consciousness, we get weak. And the more we keep focused on Krishna consciousness, we have Krishna's help. See? Then you're able to do things. Did you think that you could drive a food truck and feed the poor like, 3 years ago?
No.
No. So you're able to do that. And there's other things you're going to be able to do. Did you think you could have bought a house?
No.
No. So, you see, there's many things that you could never have done, but you were able to do it because you got Krishna's help. And as long as you keep your desires pure, there'll be more and more amazing things that you'll be able to do with Krishna's help. But the more we become greedy for our own sense gratification, the less and less we can do. Just like if I wrote a biography of my father, it would be very boring. It's mostly all suffering his whole life and failures. Right? So why do we want to live like, your biography should be wonderful, You became a devotee and you did this and you did that, and all by Krishna's mercy. But if you write a biography of a life bereft of Krishna consciousness, it would be very boring and it would be all miserable. So I have a friend of mine, he's a very wealthy man. He's not a devotee, but he's a Jewish gentleman who's very wealthy. But he feels as if, he's done a lot of things. He's got a big company, a lot of money. But he's getting at the age to retire, and he's not sure what to do. So he doesn't know anything else other than making money. And then he hears about Northwest Share and things like that. He says, you guys are doing amazing work. This guy's a very rich man, right? And he's got a big company and hundreds, maybe 1,000 employees, right? But he's realizing that that's nothing compared to what we're doing, with the food truck and other projects and things like that. And, he's in admiration of it. That he wants to also do something like that with his wife. He might even come out here to visit us, just see it. So, we don't realize the power of Krishna consciousness. But we're trying to learn about it by hearing every day. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Where's the Prabhupada? So which book you going to write? The one
I'm not writing.
the one you did, or everything you didn't do? Somebody else did.